My cousin Ethan and I used to have sleepovers all the time when we were kids. We were close, more like brothers than cousins, and his house was always the go-to spot for our adventures. Back then, before cell phones and modern video games, kids like us would actually do normal kid things, like playing hide and seek in the dark, which was one of our favorite games. One night when we were about 9 years old, both of our parents decided to go out for the night to Atlantic City. They left Ethan's older brother, Luke, in charge of us. Luke, who was a teenager, was more interested in doing his own thing than watching over a couple of kids. So, as usual, about an hour into the night, Luke told us he was heading out and made us promise not to tell Mom. Ethan and Luke had a mutual understanding. Luke hated staying home all night, and Ethan loved having the house to himself. By the time Luke left, it was already around 9 p.m. We had finished dinner and decided it would be the perfect time to play hide and seek. Ethan's house was massive, perfect for a game like this. We had a rule that made the game even more thrilling. No house lights, only flashlights. It added a layer of excitement, turning the familiar house into a maze of shadows. I was the one hiding first. We started in the basement, where Ethan would count. The basement was always a little creepy, with its low ceilings and cluttered corners. I tiptoed up the stairs as quietly as I could, then up another flight to the upstairs level of the house. The upstairs had its own living area, along with 3 bedrooms. I decided to hide in one of the unused bedrooms. It was a little dusty, with old furniture covered in sheets. I buried myself between 2 large beanbag chairs and draped a blanket over me, leaving the door slightly ajar to avoid suspicion. The house was eerily silent, save for the occasional creak of the wooden floors. I heard Ethan's footsteps approaching, light, deliberate, as if he was trying to be stealthy. He entered the room, his footsteps muffled by the carpet, and began searching. I could hear him open the closet doors, rummaging through the drawers, moving methodically around the room. My heart pounded in my chest, and I held my breath, hoping he wouldn't find me. Suddenly, I heard Ethan's voice calling my name from downstairs. It was a playful, mockingly tone, the kind meant to spook me. But something wasn't right. My mouth went dry as the realization hit me. The person in the room with me wasn't Ethan. I could see his silhouette through the blanket. A much taller figure than Ethan. Someone fully grown. My mind raced. This wasn't Luke, and it certainly wasn't Ethan's dad. The figure froze as Ethan's voice echoed from downstairs, then swiftly ducked into the corner of the room, behind a small wall that jutted out. When Ethan finally entered the room, shining his flashlight around, I prayed that the light wouldn't reach the corner where the stranger was hiding. Ethan's flashlight landed on me, but I'm not sure he even saw me. I decided to come out from under the blanket, feigning defeat with a laugh, trying to act normal. "You got me," I said, putting my arm around Ethan's shoulder and nudging him out of the room. My heart was racing, but I kept the conversation as casual as possible until we were halfway down the stairs. Then, in a whisper, I dropped the bomb. "There's someone in there with us. We need to get out now." We bolted out of the house and ran next door, banging on the neighbor's door, breathless and terrified. The woman who answered didn't hesitate to call the police. The image of the cops pulling up, running into the house, and then 5 minutes later, leading the man out in handcuffs is still vivid in my mind. Even as a 9-year-old, I felt a deep sense of relief mixed with lingering fear. It was a dark, cloudy night, the kind where the sky feels like it's pressing down on you, heavy and oppressive. There was a light drizzle, and every so often, a flash of lightning would split the sky. I was 13 years old, staying over at my friend Adam's house. His house sat at the end of a dead-end street, the last house on the block. Across the street was an open field surrounded by trees, and his backyard led directly into a dense forest. Adam and I were night owls, staying up long after his dad had gone to bed. His dad's bedroom was on the top floor, while Adam's room was on the lower level, right by the den where we spent most of our time playing video games. The night had a strange energy to it, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. We were deep into our game when a sudden loud knock at the backyard window jolted us. The blind was shut, so we couldn't see who or what was outside, Adam ran to open the blind, despite my protest. As he did, I quickly turned off the TV and lamps, plunging the room into darkness. Now that it was dark inside, we could see out into the night, but there was nothing there, just the wet grass shimmering slightly in the dim light. Another flash of lightning lit up the yard for a brief moment, revealing nothing but emptiness. We sat in the dark for what felt like an eternity, eyes glued to the window, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The silence was suffocating, but eventually, we convinced ourselves that it was just a fluke. We turned the TV and lamps back on, trying to focus on the game again, though every so often, I'd steal a glance at the window, my nerves on edge. Just as we were getting absorbed back into the game, there was another set of knocks, louder this time. Adam and I both jumped, our eyes wide as we turned toward the window. With all the lights on, we couldn't see outside clearly, until another flash of lightning lit up the sky, and for a split second, we saw a figure standing right outside the window. We bolted upstairs to Adam's dad's room, shaking him awake and screaming for him to get up. The three of us ran outside, grabbing coats and flashlights on the way. The backyard light revealed heavy, distinct footprints in the mud next to the house, leading into the forest. We followed them as far as we could, but as the mud faded, so did the footprints. There was no sign of anyone. We searched everywhere, around the house, in the woods, even out front. But there was no one there. Eventually, Adam's dad told us to go back inside, and we all tried to get some sleep. Adam and I stayed in the den, but sleep was impossible. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every little sound making my heart race. Then, at exactly 12:15 a.m., I heard it again, a third set of knocks, echoing through the silence. My stomach dropped. Adam and I didn't even hesitate this time. We ran upstairs, pounding on his dad's door. This time, Adam's dad went outside alone, telling us to stay inside and call the cops. When he came back, he was soaking wet and visibly shaken. The police arrived shortly after, but there was nothing they could do. Whoever it was, they were long gone. The knocking didn't happen again that night, but I never slept over at Adam's house again. That den, those woods, would always give me the creeps after that. I used to be close friends with a kid named Kevin. He moved across the state when I was about 8 years old, but we kept in touch. One summer, I convinced my mom to drive me all the way to Kevin's new house in the country for a weekend sleepover. As soon as we pulled onto this property, I could tell this was the perfect place for outdoor adventures. His house was a decent size, surrounded by nothing but dense woods in all directions. The first day, we didn't do much because I arrived late in the afternoon. We just hung out, talked, and watched a movie. A couple of times during the movie, I thought I heard strange noises coming from below the floor. I asked Kevin, "Do you have a basement? Is someone down there?" Kevin shook his head and told me there wasn't a basement, but his whole family had been hearing weird noises from below the house for the past few days. They were planning to have someone come out and inspect it. The next day was partly cloudy and warm, so we decided to spend most of the day outside. I convinced Kevin to go for a walk in the woods just to explore. After all, this was still new to him as well. There was a path leading into the woods, almost as if it had been made just for us. As we walked toward the path, Kevin's foot hit something with a metallic thud. We both stopped and looked down to see a rusty old cellar door, partially hidden by overgrown grass. Kevin had no idea it was there, and neither did his dad. Curious, he bent down and pulled it open. The door creaked loudly, the sound of rusty hinges echoing through the trees. It was pitch black down there, the kind of darkness that swallows up the light. A narrow ladder led down into the unknown. Neither of us dared to go down. Suddenly, we heard a sound echoing up the tunnel, like something had dropped onto a hard floor. Then we heard metallic clanging, growing louder and closer. Panic set in as we realized someone, or something, was climbing up the ladder. We turned and ran as fast as we could back to the house, our hearts pounding in our chests. Kevin's dad was shocked when we told him what we found. He called down into the cellar, but there was no answer. Not taking any chances, he called over a couple of his friends to help him check it out. Kevin and I were forced to stay inside while the adults went down into the cellar. 5 minutes later, they came back up, all of them looking pale and shaken. They spoke to Kevin's mom in private, not letting us in on what they found. Soon after, the police arrived, but we were kept in Kevin's room, away from everything. Years later, when I was 13, Kevin finally told me what his dad had found down there. There were 3 full body bags tucked away in a corner, an old cot, broken beer bottles everywhere, and the smell of freshly smoked pot lingering in the air. When we heard those noises, we had probably heard whoever was responsible for those bodies moving around down there. If you've made it this far, you're 100% a horror fanatic and we approve. If you love our campfire-themed horror storytelling experience, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads.